The corridors of the imperial palace were quiet at dawn, too quiet for a city that claimed to rule the world. Marble floors glistened under torchlight, and the shadows between the columns stretched long and thin, like fingers reaching for anyone foolish enough to wander alone. In those passages where senators plotted and generals whispered, another kind of life unfolded, one rarely recorded by historians, one endured in silence by those who had no voice. This is the story of Lucius Varro, a boy sold into the household of Rome's most powerful family, whose life became a harsh lesson in loyalty, fear, and survival inside the empire's darkest chambers. Lucius was born far from Rome, in a quiet village near the Danubian frontier. His father was a legionary, stern but fair, and his mother wove warm wool cloaks for the soldiers stationed nearby. The world he knew was small: pine forests, thin winding roads, smoke rising from clay chimneys. That world ended the day the raiders came. They burned everything: homes, granaries, even the wooden shrine in the center of the village. Many were killed, but the youngest were taken. Lucius, only 12, was dragged from his mother's arms and thrown into a wagon with other frightened children. He remembered the roar of flames behind him, the cold wind stinging his cheeks, and his mother's last cry fading like a dream. Weeks passed as they were transported south. Those who survived the journey arrived not at a slave market, but at a private estate owned by the family of Marcus Valerius Aquila, a rising political star in Rome. Unlike slaves captured in war, these children were chosen for something else, something unspoken, yet understood by the traders who sold them. Lucius had soft features, bright eyes, and a calm manner traits that, in the twisted logic of Roman aristocracy, marked him as valuable. He was purchased immediately. The Domus Aquila stood atop the Palatine Hill, its white columns visible from almost every corner of the capital. The household was enormous: dozens of servants, tutors, guards, scribes, and attendants. But the place where Lucius was taken was not the grand atrium or the lush garden. It was a quiet inner wing reserved for personal attendants of the family. There he met Rufinus, the elderly steward who managed the inner household. Rufinus examined him with a long, unreadable stare. "You are young," he said, soft-spoken, obedient. "Learn quickly, speak little, and you may survive here." The warning chilled Lucius. From that day, Rufinus assigned him training how to serve wine, clean garments, recite poetry, play the lyre, and accompany the family on travels. Another set of lessons, though never formally spoken, soon became clear: how to remain quiet, how to avoid angering powerful men, how to endure. The household was ruled not by Marcus Aquila alone, but by the expectations of Rome itself. Senators often kept young attendants as symbols of refinement and status. Some used them as political tools, others treated them as possessions. Lucius learned quickly that he existed somewhere between servant and pet, valued, but not valued for who he was. By 14, Lucius's life had settled into a suffocating rhythm: obedience, silence, service. He accompanied Aquila to meals and banquets where guests would admire him as though he were a piece of art. He played the lyre when asked, recited Greek verses, and kept his head bowed. But the deeper horror lay in how normal this all seemed to the upper class. One night, after a banquet celebrating Aquila's new position in the Senate, tensions rose in the household. A political rival accused Aquila of mishandling funds in the provinces, and rumors spread that the emperor's advisors wished to investigate him. Aquila's anger fell not upon his rival, but upon those nearest to him, his slaves. Rufinus protected Lucius where he could, guiding him to keep out of sight. Men who fear for their power, the old steward whispered, are the most dangerous. Aquila's fortunes shifted months later when he was unexpectedly summoned to the imperial palace for an audience with Emperor Commodus. In Rome, proximity to the emperor meant everything: protection, influence, wealth. Aquila did not go alone. He brought Lucius. The palace was a labyrinth of polished marble, guarded by praetorians whose armor reflected the torchlight like mirrors. With Commodus gone, he was simply a slave in a collapsing household. Rufinus's warning echoed in his mind: men who fear for their power are the most dangerous. In the days following Commodus's death, the Senate declared him a public enemy, seeking to erase his madness from Rome's memory. Many of his household attendants were dismissed, punished, or quietly executed to cover political tracks. Lucius expected the worst, but Marcia, remembering him among the few gentle souls trapped in the emperor's shadow, intervened. She arranged his transfer to a safe villa outside the city, where former attendants were sheltered until political tensions eased. For the first time in years, Lucius breathed fresh air without fear. He walked through open gardens, listened to birdsong, and slept without the threat of being summoned at any hour. Yet the scars remained. He had spent his adolescence in captivity, his identity shaped by the whims of powerful men. Freedom felt foreign, like a language he had forgotten how to speak. In time, Lucius found work as a scribe for a small library near the Tiber. He spent his days copying manuscripts, Greek plays, Roman histories, and philosophical works. In those texts, he discovered voices that soothed him: Marcus Aurelius, Seneca, Plato. Their words helped him make sense of the years he had lost. Eventually, he reclaimed his name, Lucius Varro. He never returned to the Palatine Hill. The very sight of the emperor's palace triggered memories he fought hard to bury. But he lived. He rebuilt, he healed, quietly, in the margins of Rome's vast and brutal history. Lucius's story was not unique. Throughout the empire, thousands of boys and young men captured, purchased, or born into servitude were forced into lives of obedience and exploitation. Their names rarely appear in historical texts. Their suffering was hidden behind marble columns and silken curtains, forgotten by those who benefited from their silence. But they existed. They endured, and their stories matter. Lucius Varro, though fictional, represents the countless real voices erased from Roman history, voices of young attendants trapped in a world where power was absolute and human dignity often ignored. Rome built monuments, roads, aqueducts, and armies. But it also built shadows, where people like Lucius lived unseen. Today, we remember not the emperor who took everything from him, but the boy who survived. Thanks for watching. If you found this story moving, please consider subscribing for more explorations into the forgotten corners of history.